All right, welcome back to the Retro Sports Gamer channel. And this is another Retro Sports Gaming Monthly for December 2017. We're here with the two co-hosts, TroyGBLAN.
How you doing?
Nick the Commish.
Woo!
And we got Darrell coming back, Halifax.
How you doing, guys?
He's here to officially recap the King of 94 tournament that happened in Las Vegas, and we're excited to have Darrell back on to talk about everything that happened there. So, Darrell, let us in on what was going on over there.
Yeah, so we're about 2.5 months out now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so our King of 94 tournament, that's our Tecmo Madison. That's our world championship for NHL 94. Played on both systems, a Super Nintendo bracket and a Sega Genesis bracket as well. So we had, I think we had roughly about 30 players on each side. This was the first tournament that we did where we allowed people to play on both if they wanted to. The first one we did, we just kept it separate. This time we allowed if guys wanted to pay basically a double fee or it was like might have been a fee and a half kind of thing to play on both, and 4 guys did that. And I would say that those 4 guys are probably mostly Sega players, but they also play. They wanted to play on the Super Nintendo one as well. So what we did, Tom, we had groups of 7 or 8 players, depending on how exactly worked out. And you played 6 games. So you played 3 home, 3 away. The schedules were kind of preset, but we did it randomized on the day of who would be player 1 and player 2. I just had a little random number generator on my phone. And then I just went around. I said, okay, boom, you're player 3. Boom, you're player 2. Da-da-da-da-da until we finished off the group. And then they just went and played, which they liked that because there was a little bit of randomness of it, sort of thing. You had to win 3 games to move on to the next round. So it wasn't we didn't have sort of tiebreakers to get out of the group or anything like that. It was just if you won your 3 games, you were guaranteed to move on to the next round, which was our bracket round. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think each side had about 18 players advance, got the 3 wins. I'll tell you how I did in a minute. 18 players advance, and then we just wanted to get it down to 16 players on each side to make it like a nice even bracket. So we had the bottom guys just play a best of 3 playing sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
We played in, we got our 16, and then away we went. So once we got into the next round, it was a double elimination round, and how we did it was we played best of 3s on the winner bracket side, but if you lost, you went to the losers bracket side, and that was only 1 loss, and you were done. So the entire winner bracket side was always best of 3 right up to the end. But if you got dropped down, it was just 1 loss and you were out. Some of the rules we use are very similar to what Tecmo Madison used. I borrowed your how you pick the teams kind of thing.
Matchup call.
Yeah. So loser of the coin toss would pick the teams. The winner gets his choice of the team and his home game. That in itself seems to get a lot of debate of who should have what, but ultimately we said, well, if the one guy who's picking the teams is likely going to pick teams that he knows best, which the other guy may or may not know, because there is a bit of a home advantage in the game. It's not like I don't think Tecmo Super Bowl, I don't know if there is a home advantage or not, or anything like that. But
there's a player 1, player 2 advantage. There's a couple things that come. We can break that down later.
So there is a little bit of an advantage on the home side. Ultimately, usually the best players are going to win no matter what. But and we had the same rule that you guys have. You can't pick the same matchup. throughout the tournament. So regardless if it happened in the opening round, you couldn't do that again moving all the way through.
Darrell, were these both tournaments pre-seeded, or did you just have random groupings for?
Yeah, good question. So based on my knowledge of the players' skill level, whether they played in previous tournaments, online, or whatnot, we made sure that the good players were kind of divided into each group. We tried to make them as evenly as we could, and separate them out that way. The interesting about it, the Super Nintendo side turned out to be actually pretty stacked from top to bottom, because we had a lot of these guys come down from Vancouver who we had never heard of before, never played in a tournament before, and one of those guys ended up winning the whole thing, and he was really, really good. The Sega Genesis side, there was a few online guys in there, but really it was just two guys that most people knew were probably going to be in the final, and that's Angry Jay and King Raph. And sure enough, they walked through their group 6-0. I don't even know what the plus minus ones. It was ridiculous. And then when they started the brackets, they went all the way to the end as well. And I think the only game that Angry Jay won the whole thing on the Sega side. He only lost one game all day, and that was to Raph in one of their best of threes. So I mean, it was fun to watch those two play because just how good they are at the game. The Super Nintendo side, well, I'll tell you how I did it first.
Yeah, I want to hear how you and Mikey did. Did Mikey play in the tournament too?
So Mikey didn't play. No, he didn't want to play in it. He was there, but he said, "You know what? I'll just kind of step aside." I started out 3-0, and I was kind of cruising along and figured out this is kind of, well, not easy, but then I lost my next three.
Oh.
So I just squeaked in. I think I had one of the bottom seeds there near the bottom. I squeaked into the double bracket. And who did I play in the opening round? Oh, I played Angry Jay. He played in the Super Nintendo side, so I played him in the opening round and lost. I think I lost 6-2, and then he beat me in an overtime game in the second game. Then I dropped down, and I played King Raph in the losers bracket.
Oh.
Yeah. So
give me a 30-second difference between NHL on the Super Nintendo and Genesis. You guys who play it a lot. What makes it hard for the other person not to just play it? Like NBA Jam on Nintendo and Sega are almost identical.
Yeah, that's right. The NBA noticeable difference of the technical side of it, but you're right. They're pretty much an identical game. For NHL 94, some of the major differences, manual goalie control in Super Nintendo is much different than Sega. In Sega, you have to hold down that B button, which takes a split second before it actually activates. And that can, I struggle playing Sega because of that. I'm so used to hitting the X button on my controller. I can activate the goalie right away and move back and forth as quickly as I need to. But going to Sega, it's like the guy has already scored on me, and I'm like, I would have stopped that.
Yeah.
Playing on Super Nintendo.
It should be. I was going to say it should be stated as well. They're actually developed by two different companies. EA Canada, which was Distinctive Software, and you have an entire different the U.S. arm with EA developed the Genesis version. So you have a completely different game engine.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't remember who. I thought it was Park Place Productions that made Sega, but they didn't do the other one. Or maybe I'm wrong on that. Anyways, and the other noticeable difference: Super Nintendo slap shots are pretty rare to score, whereas Sega they're quite in an abundance. Sega also has what's called a pass shot, where you're basically passing the puck.
Yeah, down B, baby.
Yeah, Super Nintendo rarely happens. So there is.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So Darrell, so it looks like you had what, 60 people total? Is that right? Because you said 30 on each side.
Yeah, I mean, if you, it was something like that, 31, 30. I don't exactly remember now. And then, well, the 4 that played on both sides. So I guess if you took overall participation, it was probably around, 56, 57 guys, something like that.
How does that, you guys do best of 3 series later on. How does that like mess up the flow? Like if one guy keeps on going best of 3, best of 3, best of 3, and another guy sweeping going 2, was there more weighting doing best of 3s rather than like just one game and you're done per matchup,
Well, here's my experience with doing tournaments. For the most part, the best players in a double elimination bracket are going to end up near the top. It's pretty rare that that one guy who's really good is not going to make it to near the end with that kind of format. So we just kind of said, do we really want to have the losers bracket kind of drag out a little bit?
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that's why we just said it one and done. I mean, in both finals when Angry Jay and King Raph met, Angry Jay beat him the first time 2-1 in the series. Raph goes down and plays EA, beats him, and then comes back up, and they're playing again for a best of 3. Mm-hmm. And the same thing on the Super Nintendo side. It was a guy named Jamil, who's from Vancouver, beat a guy whose handle is Bob Kudelski. Mm-hmm. And again, he went back down, beat the guy in one game, and then came back up to the winner's bracket. That series was much more interesting because then Bob Kudelski, he won the second best of 3 and swept him 2-0. So then because they had both won a series at that point, we said, okay, they play one more game, and it was probably the most exciting final that I've ever seen. The 2 players were tied. I believe it was 2-2 heading into overtime. So overtime was the difference. I think the difference in prize money in that game, one goal came down to a difference of about $1,400 that the other winner was going to get. And it came down to a play where Bob Kudelski had the puck with his goalie. He was out of the net, and I think he tried to rush the play, and it went right to Jamil's player, and he literally just shot a floater right into the empty net, and that was it. And then it was a crazy ending. Jamil took off running around
I saw the video. That was great.
Running around the building. All his buddies were chasing him, and they were jumping up and down. It was a crazy finish. It was awesome.
So who officially, I know we reported this the month after the tournament happened, but who won the Genesis and who won the Super Nintendo?
So Angry Jay won the Sega side with King Rash finishing second and EA finishing third. There was only three prize payouts. And then the other side, it was Jamil finished first, Bob Kudelski finished second, and I'm going to apologize. The name escapes me for the third. I think his name, I can't remember if it was Kevin or Chris that finished in third. But I'll tell you one quick story about the guy who placed third. So in my final round robin game, I was playing him, and I was 3-2. He was, I was 3-0, and he was 0-3. So I actually had a chance to eliminate him in the opening round. I was up 2-1 in the third period, and he came back and won 3-2. After that game, I think he won like 8 or 9 games in a row. So I was this close to putting out the third place guy.
Yeah.
And then he went on a huge run after that. So.
Well, good for him. That's a good story.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, you guys were in this kind of shifting gears, but you guys were sort of in the shadow of that shooting that took place at the Mandalay Bay, as I understand it. Tell me your experience. Were you anywhere near that when it happened? Do you know people that were near the Mandalay Bay when that went down?
You know what? I wasn't near that, but I'll tell you an interesting story about that. So my flight was out that afternoon, so I was already gone before that had already went down. Due to some weird arrangements with my flight schedule, I actually had to go to Vancouver first, and my father-in-law lives there, so I was able to call him in advance, so I had a place to just crash before I took my flight back to Saskatoon the following morning. But it was about 4 a.m., and my phone started blowing up with texts. Bing, 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 bing. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And it was like friends of mine and everybody else wanting to know if I was okay, which obviously I was. So that was kind of crazy, because then I was like, okay. Then I went and started checking the news and seeing what was happening. There was a few guys that were down there when it occurred. They now I don't know the exact part of it. My understanding was that they were actually on the other side of the Mandalay Bay when it was going down. So people were running out, and of course at that time, you have no idea where it is. All you know is that people are running. Someone's shouting that there's a gunman in the lobby or whatever. It's just a bit of chaos, and they're just kind of barreling it to find the closest place to hide. I think Mikey was telling me, Mikey was down there when it happened too, and he said he ran about a block and a half, I think, if I'm not mistaken, into a gas station. They hid out there for an hour or so until the police could tell them that it was okay from that point. But I can't imagine what they were going through. I was
Crazy stuff.
Scary.
Yeah, that was pretty unexpected. Running the tournament there in Vegas, So I'm glad everyone's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first thing I did after I found out about that happened, I just started reaching out to everybody as quickly as possible to get them to get back to me, so that I could let everybody know that, hey, everybody that went was okay. And unfortunately, nobody was impacted. That was at the tournament. Nobody was impacted by it.
That's good. All right.
Yeah, my dad's buddy moved to Arizona, and like 3 of his golf buddies got killed in that thing. It was just, how it goes, how it like the tentacles come out and connected. Because I was watching you guys' hockey thing the whole day before, and then when that happened, I was like, this is just surreal.
Yeah, it was. And like I said, certainly glad that all the guys that were there were okay. But
yeah,
maybe we could get into a whole nother topic, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Go back to the Toyland. Let's go back to the toy store.
Yeah, let's have some fun.
Yeah.
So Darrell, one of the things I wanted to ask about is, Mikey was a big part in making the Pixilated Heroes documentary. So you guys did the reveal there. How did that go?
Yeah, not the big part. He was the part.
Okay. Yeah.
It was his whole thing, and so he screened it. But what we saw wasn't the final product. There were still a few pieces that were missing, and he told us that in advance. He said, "Hey, you know what? This isn't the final documentary. You're going to notice some spots, and there were some blank spots in there in a little bit." And but you know what? It was the beginning. There was a few parts in the beginning I was laughing out loud. It was really good. I don't want to get into it because you guys might end up watching it, or so you'll end up watching it at some point. And obviously, I'd like to see the final product as well. But you know what? He got a lot of pretty famous people in there in that documentary, and yeah, a lot of funny moments too.
Yeah, I hope he shares it soon. I know it's his baby, so if it's not perfect, he doesn't want to send it out. But I'm very anxious for it. Yeah,
and you know what? At the time, I believe his plan was to perhaps do some kind of release in New York City. We made a connection. Arda Ocal, who's works for MSG Network. Is that what it's called? Yeah. So he was out as part of the tournament as well. Really, really nice guy, and I think he wanted to be sort of part of some, the first reveal of it. And of course, obviously based in the New York area. So unfortunately, I don't have any other information of when that might happen. I thought that perhaps sometime in the spring. Pardon me. So, but obviously, when he makes an announcement, he'll let everybody know. So.
We'll have to get Kermit back on here when that.
Oh yeah, Kermit. Yeah.
All right. So one of the other questions I had: what were the prize payouts for both tournaments?
So the prize payout both tournaments, I believe it was $2,300 or $2,300 and something for first place each side. 900 something, and then $200 or $300. I didn't do the payouts. Mikey was handing out all the money, but I think that's what it ended up being.
Okay, great.
So quite a bit of money for
man.
Like I said, that I know that Bob Kudelski, I'm sure he still thinks about that one play, right? I mean, that was a difference of, like I said, one goal was a difference of $1,400.
And everybody was pretty cool. I mean, that's a lot of money on the line where you get one of those where it's like, Nintendo malfunction or whatever. Everybody was pretty cool the whole time.
Well, yeah, you know what? That's now here's my experience. I've only ever run, NHL tournaments. So I haven't actually gone to any other type of tournament before. And I've actually had there were some guys that do this podcast called Settling on the Screen. It's a connection between galaxies. Okay, you've heard of it. And they were actually streaming the whole day for us.
They did a great job. I watched that thing. I was just all day, just like this, watching it, wishing I was there.
Did an awesome job. And I remember them telling me that they said that the guys that go to these tournaments are the most chill, mellow people they've ever met in the video game tournament. Yeah. And to me, it was just normal. And because I haven't seen anything otherwise.
Yeah.
Guys don't get pissed. They don't throw controllers. Everything is just kind of cool, having fun. Which is actually, I really like that part of it because we're still playing for money. We're still playing for a lot of money, right? It's still competitive. Mm-hmm. But it hasn't gotten like that, at least from all the ones I've done. Not to say that it couldn't, but
yeah. Angry Jay is probably the most zen guy I've ever met.
He is.
He's so chill.
You know what? And it's funny because Angry Jay and King Raph, as I mentioned, they played in both tournaments, and literally those guys were nonstop playing. I think they must have combined between the two tournaments each. They both would have played over 30 games in a day. Wow. And it was just, and it's not easy to switch between the systems, and they had to do that because, like I was saying, I'm the one that's kind of making sure that everybody's at their spots and they're playing and calling out matchups and everything else. And AJ's going and he's beating one guy on Sega, and then he's going and he's beating another guy on Super Nintendo, and then he's coming back, and it's hard to make those adjustments, and those guys do it so easy. AJ finished 4th in Super Nintendo. Like he probably is the best NHL 94 player in the world if you combine, playing on both. I mean, he finished 1st on one and 4th on the other. That's hard to do. There's a lot of guys that cannot play both that well.
So, Darrell, are you guys already thinking of your 2018 plans for something else like this, or?
So the King of 94 3, we haven't actually picked. We're still trying to figure out what we want to do. I know that really Mikey right now he's doing some other projects. Some other stuff. Like he works full time, and I think he's doing some other video projects. So I think he's just kind of taking his own time for a little while. Once he gets past that, we'll get back into the sort of the full discussion again of what we want to do and whatnot. I would like to try and host a tournament in another city, not necessarily the King of 94 tournament, but I know that the Vancouver guys are wanting me to go out there. So, and I already have a place to stay, so that maybe that's a good fit if I can figure that out. But nothing planned yet. I know I usually try and have one here in Saskatoon. I've done it the last 3 years now, so I'll probably do a 4th one at some point, but haven't picked any days yet.
Two follow-up questions. You threw a tournament in Montreal, and then also when is the tournament in Vancouver?
So the tournament wasn't in Montreal, it was in Edmonton.
Okay, Edmonton. All right.
Yeah. So Edmonton, that was in what was it, last month? Because I don't remember now. Oh yeah, it was Remembrance Day weekend, which I guess that would be, is that Veterans Day? I'm not sure what it is in the U.S.
Yeah.
November 11th, November 12th, that weekend. So that tournament there was, we did both systems just at a place called Canadian Brew House, which is a chain sports bar across Western Prairies. And for that one there, we had, I think, 15 for Super Nintendo and 10 for, 10 for Sega. That one there was only 3 of us that have actually played online before. We were on the Super Nintendo side. None of the guys on the Sega side had ever played online before. So, but it was interesting. There was one guy one guy on the Sega side, he came up to me right before it even started. He said, "What are the prize payouts?" I was like, I hadn't even thought of it yet, and I was like, okay, well, this, and then I was like, it's $100 for first, and whatever it is, $60 for second. He goes, okay, thanks, and then he went out and dominated the whole thing.
Oh,
To me afterwards, he goes,
Ringer.
I'm like, okay, I'll get you your money and your trophy here. But I didn't get it. It's too bad because I was playing too. I didn't get a chance to see him play. Because before it, we promote the community, we promote online playing, we promote our tournaments, and we're hoping to find that those one or two people that are in a tournament that will come out to our King of '94. It happened when I did one in Halifax last year. One of the guys there who won the Super Nintendo side, he flew all the way to Vegas to compete. So. And we're kind of hoping the same thing that you find one or two really good guys that want to come out and play. So,
did you show them these cards here, the NHL '94 cards?
I don't have any of those actually.
Well, Aqua Lizard sent me a box, so everyone's getting fed with these at our tournament coming up in February.
Yeah, he sent me. He said he would send me some there, so I gave him my address. Just haven't got it yet, but he's gonna ship some out if he already hasn't already.
And then Darrell, real quick before we move on to the discussion topics, where was the tournament in Vancouver?
Oh, so that one there.
When is it? I mean,
there's no date or nothing yet.
Okay.
That's one I'd like to have, if I could, but no date, no timeline for anything like that. I was thinking maybe the weekend of February 24th. I don't think there's anything going on that weekend.
Savage.
All right. So
that's Troy's weekend.
So we do see you guys that are viewing in the chat. So if we have time today, we will answer some questions from the chat. But we're going to move on to some discussion topics right now. Darrell, thanks for breaking down the tournament for us here today. And then we got some discussion topics that I think you will have a big part in. What the outcome is with these. But basically what I want to ask is there's tournament rules for Tecmo Super Bowl. There's tournament rules for NHL 94 and the NHL 95 tournaments that Nick the Commish throws. And the first question is, are the rules against certain substitutions in NHL 94-95?
Yes, there is. So for our tournaments, we play with no line changes. The reason why we do that, twofold. One, if you leave line changes on, there are some guys that will literally spend minutes, days changing their lineup to get it how they want. So we don't do line changes. We, have your best line put out there, which literally means you got your 5 starters. Pretty simple at that point. Guys know the rosters really well, so makes it very simple and easy. The one thing that we do say is that if you're going to change your players, you can only do it during intermissions, or obviously before the game in intermissions. And then we allow one change during a game if you call a timeout. So in the game, there actually is a timeout button. It doesn't affect anything on a one if there's like no line changes. It does if you're playing line changes because it actually regenerates the health of the players. But in this case, it doesn't do anything. But we allow them to call a timeout if they want to make a line change. And some guys will do that because when penalties are on and certain guys get injured or whatever, it can impact what players come out next, and they'll want to make sure that the guys that come out next, are in the lineup. So
yeah.
One variance on that particular rule, and anytime there's a play stoppage, whether it's an intermission or an injury or penalty because of how the game sets the lineup, typically the players that actually go in there and make that change, it's about 10 seconds and they're back in the game. So it's not particularly disruptive because they're already putting the player into the penalty box as a result of the action that just took place. So that's one thing that our tournament does a little differently, and that mirrors a lot of the online play leagues where you're allowed to make that change quickly. But if you don't know what you're doing, you could waste a lot of time in there. So I see the reason for maybe restricting that as well. It makes sense in that. But that's something that's not standardized yet across the different NHL 94 tournaments that are out there.
And Troy makes a good point there. One thing I forgot to mention was injuries. We also allow that an opportunity for time for not just the injured team, but both teams to make a change if they want to as well. So,
okay. And Nick, what do you guys do with NHL 95 tournaments? Do you have any rules?
We're a little more laissez-faire on it. We have I'd say about 70% of the people that play are like, they're almost like anti-no changes. You just got to give what the computer gives you, just because they don't really want to look. But the only rule we really have is you just can't pause. You know, you can't pause when you get mad and switch a guy out. Like sometimes I'll do that too, where I'm just like, you missed a shot. I'll just pause it right there because I want to pull him. But those are things you can't do. But for the most part, that's what we do. Yeah, and normally what it is, you just get yelled at after a little bit if you're going through and you're like, what's his stick handling versus his, agility, and you're going back and forth with teams you don't really know. Then you just get yelled at. But we don't have anything really set in stone.
What's the penalty for pausing in your tournament? A Jaeger bomb?
Oh yeah, probably. It's worse. They're always looking for reasons to make you drink more. It's like I'm like a girl at a sorority or fraternity party. They're just like, hey, take another shot, because they know I'm weak and I get loopy quick.
All right, so we talked about that there are variants in the NHL tournaments if there's substitutions allowed or not. So, what do you guys should there be a standard, or do you think it should just be left up to the organizer? I'll start with Troy.
I think it's directly up to the organizer, because there's some tournaments that play with penalties on, so that means offsides is as a part of the game, which completely changes a lot of things. You don't get those 2-line passes for fast breaks because you'll get whistled on that. So it really just really depends on who's running. I think the important thing is to have consistency at that specific event, so that your people that come the next time you have a tournament, they kind of know what to expect, so you don't have to relearn. If you change rules every single time, that could frustrate people. So as long as something isn't game breaking and it's a preference thing and it's communicated, I think that's a big thing. Communication, so that there's no doubt from the players what they're supposed to do.
All right. Go ahead, Darrell.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and I agree with Troy. It's really just up to the organizer and what they want to do. But I have been doing some polls lately just to see if they're in line with what we've been
those.
using.
I've been answering those polls. I like
yeah.
those.
And they have been in line, because some people say, why don't you play with this? Why don't you play with that? And I get it. Some people like offsides on. I absolutely hate it. But when I did a poll, 67% of the people agreed with me. So I figure that we're still okay. And that means that we're not catering to 1/3 of the public, but that's how it is, sort of thing, right? So as an organizer, I play with the rules that I like to play with. And I hope that most people agree with them. And we've been using them for online. People like no line changes. People like the no offsides. The one area that always becomes a particular bit of a debate is penalties on. And that one, it's interesting because penalties are random in the game. You can't control what the AI does. He hooks a guy, gets a penalty. The second guy hooks a guy, gets a penalty, and now you're down 5-on-3, and you had nothing to do with it, right? Mm-hmm. So, and guys don't like that. But the alternative is that if you take them off, then guys will crash the crease because they can't get a penalty anymore. And in some ways too, if I'm playing and Jeremy Roenick gets knocked out of the game, I kind of want that guy to sit in the box for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, but I get to both sides of it. Without penalties, maybe it's a more of a fair game because it's 5-on-5 all the time, right? So it's that one there. I kind of have a conflict with of whether I want to do it or not. Again, I think I did the poll and it was pretty close. I think 50 was just over 50% preferred them on. It was that close. So I'm like, oh, half the people don't like it and half the people do like it.
Well, for the Genesis version, because I know you're a Super Nintendo guy, so I'll interject. So on the default ROM, if you have penalties off, the B check no longer functions. So you only have the C checker holding, and that's a positional thing. So that's one feature that it gets removed unless you're working with a ROM hack. But for the base game, that's definitely a part of it right there. And I think that it fundamentally changes how the game is played. Also, there's actually an advantage to how the AI plays. So when you're in a shorthanded situation, it's much easier to navigate through the AI defenders and get to a breakaway.
Oh, okay.
So it's funny. Shorthanded is something of an advantage, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
Nice. That's good to know. Okay, so as you know, Darrell, me, Nick, and Troy also play a lot of Tecmo Super Bowl. So I'm going to start with Nick. Nick, what do you think? We're a little bit more standardized as far as the Tecmo Super Bowl substitutions. So do you think there should be more freedom with the substitutions or more restrictions with how it currently is?
You know, with substitutions, gosh, I'd say lock it down more, because Tecmo just seems so more intense. Because people, I think there's a more hardcore group that are playing all the time and working things. So it would be better. I remember playing a guy online, and he would change like quarterbacks every so often and all that stuff. It does slow down the game. You need the flow, especially when you have those numbers. So I think for substitutions in Tecmo, they got it right, because it just gets to too much. My friends always make jokes about the Tecmo vets when they went to a tournament, and they would make changes, and they would do it so quick that they didn't even know what happened. They would have a seizure from it. It was like, and just so I guess I'd say lock it down just for the speed of the game.
I think the official rules, and I don't know how. I don't go to the big tournament, or haven't yet, but the rules that you're handed down, they say check once per half. I think you guys are checking once per quarter typically, because that's when the conditions can change.
Yeah, I think that's you get one.
And you'll see the typical, like if you get a guy that has like a Bobby Brister, you might see a Rick Strom sighting at the end of a half for that JJ. If that takes 5 seconds, no one's really going to bat an eye about that. So no. I think the rule is in place to prevent people from hanging out there for 10 minutes every quarter, trying to make this the most optimal thing. On top of that, you have the rules related to wide receivers and tight ends in running back positions. And I think that's a whole nother thing that requires some consistency, however you feel about it. Because if you don't do that properly, it changes the matchups as far as like all of a sudden the Oilers become just absolutely dominant, because now you've got Drew Hill as a running back, plus you still have got 3 Pro Bowl caliber wide receivers plus Warren Moon. It's like pick your poison, but now you're stuck with Lorenzo White or
Alan Pinkett.
Yep. You know, the guy that's going to Tundra Bowl, Doug
Lloyd. Yeah,
Doug Lloyd. So any of those guys, you know, they're very pedestrian, and especially at the tier that they're at. So, you know, I'm so used to playing with those restrictions. And just to clarify, Halifax, so you can't take Jerry Rice and the 49ers and make him your running back. You have to run with Roger Craig or Dexter Carter or Tom Rathman.
So for someone who doesn't I mean, I love playing Tecmo Super Bowl. I suck at it, so I would never participate in a tournament. But you know, perhaps explain, if somebody's watching this that hasn't played Tecmo Super Bowl before, the reason why, you know, why you guys disallow those types of changes. Is it just because of their positioning, or is there other ways that they're sort of manipulating is it kind of cheating, I guess, if you're putting a running back and a wide receiver, or vice versa, or however you're doing that?
So I'm going to speak to the mechanic that I think what makes it broken. So there's a mechanic in the game called popcorning, and it has to do with the hit power stat. If you're 50 or more points higher than the player you're contacting, it's going to get popcorn, where they fly in the air and they lose control. However, that does not apply when you're controlling the player with the lower hit points. So when you take a wide receiver with all that speed, the hit power is an irrelevant stat. So what ends up happening is they become extremely dominant in that situation. However, if you take a running back like Bo Jackson and put him in a wide receiver slot, his reception stats are going to be low, so he's not as effective as having a receiver in that position. So I think that's part of the reason why that rule exists. There's some teams that are just broken when you put that player in a position like that, because that mechanic no longer functions when you're controlling the player.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like obviously in NHL '94, there is no luxury of putting a forward back on defense to replace a defenseman. It's just you can swap amongst the forwards only, or you can swap amongst the defensemen only, but you can't do both. You can't put out your, like they do in the NHL nowadays with their power play units. They're putting 4 forwards on the ice, defensemen. So
if only you could put Phil Housley in at center when Teemu Selanne gets injured.
Exactly. No, I think it just takes away from the feel. Even though it's an arcade game, you still want positions and players playing the right positions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think my opinion has changed on this a little bit. I think it started when I started playing with Mort some more, when Mort came to Chicago, and then he started playing with me. I noticed like he started putting like Neil Anderson at wide receiver, and then his high hit power guys like that, they're fullbacks and their hit power is made for the running, but you put them at tight end and their hitting power is better than the offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Same thing with Neil Anderson. You put him at first wide receiver. His running speed's a 50, so he's getting that quick head start. Plus, he's a 63 max speed. That's giving you a huge advantage there. So I'm not saying that you should I think it either has to be all or none, in my opinion. So it's like you either allow all the substitutions or you just restrict the player to be either a running back, wide receiver, or tight end, because I think there's a gray area in there where certain running backs, there's other teams like this too, like you could put Mel Gray, 56 max speed, Lions, put him as a wide receiver. You'll even see guys at the end of the game like throw Bo Jackson in at wide receiver, a 75 max speed, because it's up to a Hail Mary for them to tie the game or win the game. So I think there is a debate that could be had to say it should be all substitutions, or the player has to be locked into where they actually should be positioned. That's just my opinion on it.
Can I raise one question on that? Because I've watched some of your streams, and I swear to God, some of those players are like robots. They go in, they change. The names are moving so fast.
Yep.
And I have no idea how somebody can actually mechanically move it that quick and then zip in and zip out. And it's like, I have no idea who they just changed there or who they took out.
It is funny.
Takes about 2 years. Play the game a lot for about 2 years, and you can start to do that.
So then when that happens, is it possible that somebody could actually sneak in a play, or you would notice if you were the competitor?
Well, so what happens is if you look at the top row of plays, which are running plays, you see the name that the runner is going to get. So if you had Rice there, you would know immediately.
You would know right off the bat.
And actually, according to the rules, it's okay to have him there, but then you wouldn't be allowed to call that play.
Yeah.
Obviously. Which I can't imagine anybody would do that, though, right?
At the end of a half, you can see people throw a wide receiver into a running back slot. Like the pass two, for instance, the running back 2 position runs a go route. So you might want to put a fast guy there along with the guy that's streaking down the bottom, which is wide receiver 2. So that might be a reason to do that. But then if you have a running back play that goes to the running back 2, he would show up there and you wouldn't be allowed to call that at that time until you put an actual running back in that position.
Okay.
And there's a strategy to that, the substitutions actually, Darrell, because I'm a player who can't sub that fast, and then if someone else is doing it, I'm not trying to look. So they're actually seeing it so fast that they know which players are going into better condition, so the ratings are going up. So if I could see it, but they're doing it, if I could see it, I could key in on those guys that they sub in, but they're doing it so fast that, I might not even know what subs they're making. So that's almost a little side strategy of Tecmo Super Bowl, how fast you could do your substitutions without your opponent seeing it.
When you just said the ratings go up, are you saying the ratings change during the game?
Correct.
Yeah.
There's a 50% chance that nothing happens, and there's a 25% chance that you either go up or down in condition from average. So the conditions are bad, average, good, and excellent. And there's a notch. If you look at the ratings, everything goes down one notch or up one notch per rating.
That's what makes you guys so smart. I don't have to worry about that playing NHL 94.
You just look at the stats at the beginning of the game. See that Ray Bork's at 100.
All right, let's move on to the next discussion topic. Are there any in-game moves outlawed in NHL 94-95? So, Nick, I'll start with you. NHL 95, the tournaments you run, are there any in-game moves outlawed, like a check or a one-timer or something like that?
If it's in the game, it's in the game. And, you know, there's things that they call the cheater moves, which are the moves that are easily the drone auto goalie just can't, you know, handle. But it's just part of the game. Sometimes people don't like the spamming of moves, like where I'm just going to go and I'm going to try to cut across every single time. But no, nothing's banned for us.
Yeah, we're the same way. We take the same approach. If it's in the game, it's in the game. And I'll tell one interesting story about that, though. Was I think it was in the tournament in Halifax. This one guy said to me, he said, "Oh, I'll never do that cross crease move. I'm not that cheap. I'm not going to do that." And I just said to him, I said, well, just know that the other guy's going to do it to you. And sure enough, he played one guy, and that's all the guy did to him the whole game.
Yeah.
8-1. But just to make it in, he didn't score any other way. It was pretty funny actually watching it, because the other guy was like, he held to his morals, but I don't even know if he won a game.
First thing I taught my kid, you know, you got to start with somewhere, right?
Yeah. So yeah, no, we're the same way. We don't because the thing is, manual goalie in the game, you can stop any play. There is no play that can
like a Tecmo lurch. Yeah.
Yeah. If
everything can be stopped.
Yeah. If your manual goalie is good, you can stop any play in the game. So that's why we allow the whole thing.
The one thing that seemed to come out in some, just looking at forum discussions and some debate, is the pass goal on the Genesis. And because when you get to a frame perfect situation, you can shoot it with the pass faster than the goalie can get there. That being said, it's an expert level move and still requires, pixel perfect placement and timing of that maneuver. So it's been something that has just been accepted that it exists. And one more thing you have to kind of guess at, which angle you want to take away, the left or the right or the center.
And you're right. And I think I would add to that too, is that yes, there are guys out there that are experts at that pass shot, but you have players to knock them down. So, I mean, if you know that a guy is really good at a pass shot, and again, I don't play Sega, but I know that if I was strategizing against somebody that would, I would make sure that those players, I would reduce their chances of putting them in those positions, right, and make them try and score other ways. So, I mean, there's a defense for anything. You're right. Maybe the goalie control in that case doesn't impact it, but the rest of the rest of the way you play defense does. So,
let a breakaway happen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I would guess, that being said, that you guys all run NHL tournaments, that you don't think there should be any in-game moves outlawed with NHL tournaments.
Nope.
No. Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, it's
in the game. It's in the game.
Yeah, I have never come across a goal yet where we could say that, hey, that's a cheating move because it's impossible to stop. I've never seen it.
I mean, slapping the controller out of your neighbor's hand, I guess, would be considered outlawed.
The main goal is there's one outlawed move, and it was when people have to take a piss and they pause the game, and then you pull the guy's goalie as they're taking a piss, and they come back and score.
That's like leaving your computer unlocked. You come back and there's material on your desktop.
Or you tell the guy that, oh yeah, you got to put in Poulet goalie. He's a French guy on your team, and you got to put him on. He's your best goalie. It is choose pull.
All right, so I'm going to bring this conversation back to Tecmo Super Bowl again. So, as we know, there is one in-game move banned in Tecmo Super Bowl, and that is the lurching.
It should be tapping.
It should be what?
Tapping, because I'm so bad at it.
Can't handle the 17.
Yeah, I'm about a 4.
So Nick and Troy, I want to ask you, and I'll start with Nick. Do you think, and this is just the way it's been since, you know, pretty much everyone's gone online and found the Tecmo Players Circuit. I know that was my first exposure to it. But lurching is outlawed. So, Nick, do you think lurching is broken enough where it should be outlawed?
Before we dive into the conversation, let's just define it real quick for those that don't understand what that means.
Yes. Yeah.
So lurching is taking a player at the beginning of the snap, and the type of lurching that's disallowed is the defensive lineman. So either the two ends or the center. At the beginning, quarterback is under center. You move left or right and start diving immediately before the player has the ability to even control their player. The play is over because the dive tackled the quarterback or the handoff. So that is depending on who the quarterback is and who the defensive players are, can be game breaking on the play. So that's why that has been removed. So now kick it back to you.
All right, go ahead, Nick. What do you think?
Yeah, Tecmo comes down to the usable plays in their playbook. You know, I don't know how many plays there are, but there's only about 20 good ones. And if you put in the lurch, there's like 6. You know, so you know, I'd flirt with a thing where you get 1 lurch a game or something like that. When we played Burning Mart, there was a lurch. We had lurches legal for 1 game, and I just dominated in it because I just lurched a lot as a kid. I remember doing Bob Nelson 99 sacks. So, but yeah, it really squashes the gameplay. There's not really anything around it unless you can just run at the guy. Because lurching on runs are pretty hardcore too. You know, you can kill a lot of those with that tackle. It's not just passing.
All right, Troy, what do you think?
Oh, I think it's absolutely game breaking, and the rule needs to be there 100%. Now, if you have a fast quarterback like QB Eagles, in certain matchups, he might be able to get away. I think anyone with 19 ms or faster running maximum speed as a quarterback has a chance to potentially avoid that. Otherwise, you're sort of forced into shotgun formations, and then you're looking at pitch plays and sweeps as the running plays so that you don't get lurched immediately. And anyone who can't tap, or is like a definitive tapping disadvantage, now you got that defensive lineman coming through and you have no chance before your blocks develop to be able to do anything. So it's just a mechanic I don't think it was ever intended by the game developers to allow that through. If you play the original Tecmo Bowl, it is much more difficult to be able to pull off things like that.
I invented the lurch in 1991 too, just so you guys know. I was the first one.
I'll try.
Were you there with Al Gore at the beginning too, with the internet?
Yeah.
I'll chime in on the lurch. It was the absolute reason why I stopped playing the game.
Yeah.
So when the game first came out, my friend and I and a bunch of guys, we loved. I mean, I don't know how old I was then. Probably, you know, elementary school still, but. We loved playing the game all the time, and actually that was when we thought that Bo Jackson, the Raiders, were the best team in the game. I don't think that they are, if I understand correctly. There's about 4 or 5 other teams that might be better than them, but it was his younger brother that started at some point figured out how to do that lurch, that dive or whatever you were talking about right off the tackle. And once he started doing that, it was like we couldn't do anything, and then we had to go through shotgun mode. I'm like, I don't want to play this anymore.
Yeah.
You know, when you're beating his younger brother all the time, and then he figures out a move that you can't stop, and like you're handicapped. I remember getting really frustrated, and I didn't want to play Tecmo Super Bowl. So that was kind of the reason why I stopped playing initially. I couldn't stand losing to his younger brother because he had this one move that even when I tried doing it, I wasn't as good as he was doing it. He could do it every single time. So yes, it should be banned forever.
So we can bring you back into the fold. There's a whole online community where lurching is not allowed, and you can just lose by 50 points all on your own. No lurching.
Well, I've been testing out the game a little bit, and my opinion differs from you guys. I will agree with Nick 100%. The playbook definitely is more limited with lurching legal. because you will at least have to pick 2 shotgun plays. But there are combinations of playbooks where you can select where there's only one play that could be lurched, and I could show you guys. But in comparison, Tecmo Super Bowl for the NES versus the Super Nintendo and Genesis versions, lurching is extremely broken in those 2 versions of the game. It plays very similar to the Nintendo one, and the graphics even look similar. But because they nerfed the speed of all the players, the lurching is about the same speed with the nose tackle. But, you know, like the QB dropping back is much slower. So I don't think it is as broken in the Nintendo game. We've played me and my family's played a Christmas Eve tournament, Tecmo Super Bowl, for like 10 years, and we've never outlawed any substitutions or lurching. Now, that being said, there's probably
anarchy. What are you guys eating? A baby for Christmas? That's just anarchy.
As long as it's wrapped in bacon.
Yeah.
What I will say, only half of us are good at the game. Most like, you know, about half of us are good. But you know, my cousin always there's one cousin I have that I always play him in the Final Four, and he's a big lurcher. And, you know, I'll notice the pattern of when he's going to lurch, and then I'll call like a sweep left or sweep right, and then I'll just burn him for a touchdown. So, you know, there is like a gambling aspect to it, I would say. So, you know, if you pick, like, say because you can realistically pick 3 shotgun plays in a Tecmo Super Bowl playbook. If you go 2 shotgun plays and two plays under center, you know, it's a little bit more of a gamble, but then you can catch your opponent gambling more and hit him for a big run. So I think like a tournament like that would definitely change almost the in-game strategy. You know, it's not as broke as I think it is, but as for a standardized tournament, I think, yeah, it probably should be banned, but I think it's something worth exploring.
Crickets.
So we're not getting a lot of agreement there, so we'll move on to the next topic. I was hoping Nathan could get on to talk about the Tundra Bowl V. Nathan, he's thrown the Tundra Bowl in Green Bay. This will be the 5th year. It's coming up January 27th. I know me and Troy have played in that tournament before. We've played at the last one. This is one of the Madison Major tournaments, but as a standalone tournament, it's really shown itself to be one of the top tournaments out there for all that he's offering. So I wanted to talk about, since he's not here, just, you know, some of the things that he's offering, and I think me and Troy could go back and forth on it. But one of the things that he's offering that I've seen is just for showing up to the tournament or entering the tournament, you have a chance at winning a signed Henry Eller jersey.
That is fucking sweet, man. I saw that. I was like, oh man, I want to go just for that.
And then I think his just like, if you want to pay to be in the raffle, he's got a signed Jerry Rice jersey.
Jeez. How's he getting those? He's just signing them. He's signing them.
He's signing. And then Troy, there's a couple more things that he's offering with this tournament.
So I know that, and I don't have his stuff in front of me right now. I was hoping that he would have been able to be here, but this has been the same every tournament that I've been to. So I've been to the past 2. You get a really nice T-shirt, and it's Gildan. It's not some cheapo thing where the print comes off. I mean that it's a nice T-shirt. It has good logo. The other one had like the retro Tecmo font on it, but just a real nice quality T-shirt that you get there. They have usually different drink and food specials there that are, you know, make your experience very affordable, so you're not waiting too long to eat because you're trying to get your games in so you can chow down quick. He goes 100% with original NES hardware. So that's one thing that I've seen start to infect other tournaments is the use of clone hardware, including the one that I run, just out of ease or needing additional systems. So he goes 100% old school. He gets his NESs tuned up and goes with the original. So that experience is just like you remember it as a kid. You can bring your own controller if I remember correctly. They do inspect it, but they do let you bring that in, which is nice. So if you've got your favorite controller you might play online with, as long as it's an OEM, either a dog bone or that square model 001 controller, you can bring that in. And I apologize, he's probably got a whole bunch of Doug Lloyd, who actually lives in Green Bay, is going to be there. So he's he played for the Houston Oilers, but also played for the Green Bay Packers at one point, and now resides in Green Bay.
So he's on his buddies. I'm going to see a bunch of nerds playing a game.
You'll probably have a blast. He might have played the game, back then.
Maybe.
Because that was Madden before Madden was Madden.
Yeah.
Yeah, he also gives out like packs of cards for
that too.
There's a bunch of side things going on. I really just like his format, starting with what is it, five team round robins.
Oh wow!
Yeah, players. So you get guaranteed 4 games, and then I know last year, if you advanced, you went into an automatic double elimination tournament. So it wasn't like it's single, and then Elite Eight's double. It was double elimination all the way. So I like that he made that decision to go double elimination. Plus, for like the middle of the road players, they got to enter into like a consolation tournament, 16 players. And I think he's doing that again as well. And I think there might even be some type of prize for that too. So
yeah, I think when you're a bigger tournament like that, you got to give people, because people are driving farther. I mean, when you're just doing a local little bar one where it's just your buds show up and they don't really give a rat for the most part, they just want to play a few games. But if I was coming out, that would make me want to go even more, knowing that I get 5-6 games in for my travel.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed about Nathan's tournament that I really like is as far as the presentation of not only the systems like Troy said and the TVs being there, but some guys just write out like brackets on a piece of paper and they don't have anything there. The last tournament I was at, Nathan used the challenge.com.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Used that the whole time. So he had like, HDMI from computer HDMI going to a TV so people could look at the HD TV to see who they play next. So it was really well organized in that matter and looked really sharp. So I give him kudos for that. And I'm looking forward to see how his tournament's going to turn out this year. But it's definitely a big time tournament. So if you guys are thinking about going to a Tecmo Super Bowl tournament, the Tundra Bowl's up there with the best of them.
Totally.
All right, so let's move on to the next thing here, and that is some live tournament recaps. So we got a couple Tecmo Super Bowl tournaments, and we're going to have Nick recap it.
Sorry to cut you off here. I got to get going, but I just wanted to say thanks for having me on there.
Oh, no problem, Darrell. Thanks a lot for coming back and recapping the King of 94, and we'll hope to talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, so,
go.
Talk to you later. Bye.
All right, so live tournament recaps. So we're going to talk about a couple Tecmo Super Bowl ones, and then I want Nick to break down his Ryder Cup that just happened this last Friday. So the first one that we had since our last Retro Sports Gaming Monthly is the King's Cup in Fishkill, New York. And the organizer, I believe it was Matty D, and I don't want to mess it up this time because I did on the last one.
Yeah, not Diaz, DeGeorge, I think, right?
Yeah, he was the organizer for this tournament. So I think they had a smaller tournament in this one. First place was Kevin S. Second place, Eric M. Third place, Chris B. And fourth, Leaf Powers. I don't know their Tecmo names, unfortunately.
Eric Merlis is Arn Coam.
Oh, okay. So that makes a lot of sense.
Leaf Powers is the guy, he wrote like a 90-page Tecmo document about 20 years ago. Was like the first like burning Mort, Mort file. Before Mort doing Mort, he was the Mort.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did Nick make it a notepad or something?
Yeah, it was all done. It really was. Yeah, definitely.
And then we had a big tournament on December 2nd. It was a Madison Major tournament. Tecmo, I believe that's 9. Only the Good Die Young in Southington, Connecticut. The organizer was Arcanum, which is Eric M.
Mm-hmm.
And first place in this tournament was Matt DeGeorge. He beat Mort. Second place was Mort. And
Mort, the Road Warrior.
And then going back to the last tournament they had in November as well, it looks like the Northeast, there's some elite players. The 3 that keep popping up are Matt DeGeorge, Stock Talk, and Arcanum. So those guys are really cementing themselves as like the powerhouses of the Northeast when it comes to Tecmo Super Bowl. But they did have a stream, so I was able to follow some of this, and I think Troy was on there as well. Matt DeGeorge wearing the D-Generation X shirt.
Nice.
It looked like they had a DJ there, and they were pumping some jams for him. But he went into the finals and he had to beat Mort twice in a double elimination. And Troy, if you remember, do you want to talk about a couple of those games?
I was not involved too much with the stream on that.
Okay. Well, there was 2 games. They were both odd calls, I guess you would say, in Tecmo Super Bowl. First one was Bills Oilers, and I forget who was who, but that was the first game. Bills. Oh, I think Mort was. Yeah, because they're going to have a weak secondary against the Oilers, and that's ultimately what Matt took advantage of. And then the second matchup was I believe it was a clunker. It was the Colts-Patriots matchup.
Garbage day.
Yeah, and Matt, I think he was the Colts, and again, took Mort down. They were both close games, but in the end, he got pumped up with his DX jams and his shirt, and he took Mort down in a double elimination situation. So congratulations to Matt DeGeorge. I know he came up short in the tournament.
The Colts had like one good defender. They'd be not because their OSHO is okay. It's just their defense is so bad.
Who's that?
Colts.
Oh yeah,
Matt DeGeorge took down Flo at Madison a couple years ago in a Colts Pats matchup, and he just destroyed Flo with it. He seems to just know how to work that matchup up and down the field.
Yeah. Yeah, the Colts only have I would use Mark Pryor. He has like a 44 interceptions, but that's the best they have. So yeah, they're pretty weak. And then if you guys want to check out the recordings of those games, they're actually on Gerald Smith's YouTube channel. So check out his YouTube channel.
He's also, people might know him as Suicide King 81. The Tecmo world, he runs a great Tecmo scene down in the South. If you are anywhere near Louisiana, Texas, Alabama, and you want a regional tournament to go to, check out the Bayou Bowl.
Place to go. He's the place to go for sure.
Cool. All right, so our last thing here is upcoming tournaments. So we talked about one, which is the Tundra Bowl. That's a big time one. We got the one coming up. We actually got 2 the same day. The reason this is such a big day for Tecmo Super Bowl tournaments is because it is Pro Bowl weekend, and no one cares about the Pro Bowl. They rather play Tecmo Super Bowl leading up to the week of the actual Super Bowl.
Yep.
So that's a great day, a great weekend to have tournaments because there's nothing really going on in the sports world. So the first one we got is Bloomington, Illinois. Tim Mann is going to be the organizer there, and it's Tecmo 15 for them, and it's called Blono Tecmo this year. It's been kind of like a secret in Illinois until this year. Tim's finally opening it to the public. It's a little bit different. You're going to go, and if you pay to be in the tournament, it's $25, but all drinks and food are included. Prizes are more of gag prizes. Unless you win first place, you get entry free. They'll pay for your entry into Tecmo Madison, and they also have the biggest prize as far as trophy that you can probably get in Tecmo Super Bowl, and that's the Tecmo Bowl championship belt that you might have seen online. It's a masterpiece, to say the least.
Oh.
But this year,
I'm hoping we get the winner on the stream next time. They can show it off. Maybe have it over the shoulder.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to see that happen. I'm going to that tournament, so hopefully it could be me. But we'll see. I guess Tecmo Psycho is the guy who won last year. But this year's going to be different. Before, Tim just had the guy who won take pictures with the belt, and then I think he keeps it. But this year, the guy who wins the belt gets to keep it for the whole year until next tournament.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
that's a big turnout then? We're talking like over 20, over 30?
He's got over 40 paid guests already because he's been putting it on the Facebook page, Bloomington Tecmo, of who's paying. So, yeah, it is a bigger tournament. There's a lot of locals involved, but, you know, I think he's at least pulling some guys from Illinois like myself are going to play in this tournament. So I'm interested.
As a Tecmo experience, you know, I wouldn't, you know, say burning more, but more so it's about getting together and play for the love of the game, and it's not necessarily about prize money because there is none, at least egg prizes and just bragging rights. Tim, who organizes it, admittedly says I'm really mediocre at Tecmo, but we love the game, and there's a place for that. A lot of the stuff that I've done locally, even though I'm in the backyard of Tundra Bowl, there are a lot of guys who just don't feel like Darrell had said, he loves Tecmo Bowl, but would never go into a tournament that was high stakes with a certain entry. Well, we've done little bar nights, kind of like you have, you know, smaller get-togethers that, and he's doing the small get-together on a larger scale, if that makes any sense at all, and making it all about the Tecmo and enjoying all the food and beverages they can manage to get down their gullets. Sounds like an amazing time, honestly.
Yeah. So I'll definitely provide feedback for that tournament. On January 27th, I'll also be providing a stream for those guys, so you'll be able to follow that live. Although most of the Tecmo guys will be somewhere else because they'll either be at Tundra Bowl or there's one happening January 27th. The JJ's Burden got postponed until January 27th. So
where was that?
It's a good time. We normally do our Segathons around that time too. It's a good time to play video games.
Yeah, it's in the Northwest. Here. Northwest. I think it's Portland, Oregon. And then, Troy, before we get to your announcements, Nick, can you break down the Ryder Cup for us that just happened this Friday?
The famous Ryder Cup of Segathon. We've been playing this for years, and it originally was the 4 guys from an upper class of ours and the 4 guys, the little brothers, and we would play like a Ryder Cup style where you pick teams and you got to play everybody against the other team, and then loser would have to pay for the keg at Segathon. So we've been doing this for years, and it's just getting more and more intricate. It's probably one of the most fun event we do because it's just you have a team, so you can yell at your team. We play doubles as well because you can play doubles on NHL. So that helps, and you pick all your matchups beforehand. So you got to use everybody on the roster of NHL. So you do it internally, and then you kind of say, okay, I'm using the Anaheim Ducks on this one, and they might be using Detroit Red Wings, which is a very good team. The Ducks are the worst. So there's a lot of strategy involved there. We also give points for weird stuff. So you get 2 points for a win, but if you beat a guy by 5 points, 5 goals, you get an extra half a point. If you beat them by 10 goals, you get a full extra point. So it's just like you're yelling at a guy like, do not let him score one more goal on you right now. We're all over him. Just do not let it happen. And then we have some weird ones, like if you get a penalty shot, you get a quarter point. If you injure a guy, you get a quarter point. So it gets to be you kind of got to do the math a little bit, but it's fun. We actually added a 3rd team this year called the Cult of Ren, which is some other guys we play with, and kind of went with a cult theme. So we did triples. And that was so hard to get all the math to work. So everybody's playing everybody. Spent way too much time one afternoon trying to figure it out. But it was just a blast. And then what happened is our best player couldn't make it. So we said, hey, our 4th player was Hollywood, kind of how you did the Shark Wolski at your tournament. You know? And what it was is we had a guy from the other class be on our team. So when they were doing the team picture, he goes, he unveiled the NWO NHL 95 World Order shirt and joined our team. Yeah. Bad part was we didn't pick the best player on their team, so we still got beat. But it was a good time. So 97 won. the running joke was we had so many shots and nobody got in a fight. It was just amazing.
I'm surprised you guys
we just did it at somebody's house, so that's how we did it.
Yeah, it looked like it was in someone's basement that had a nice bar set up going.
Yeah. Buddy moved into a new house. I would describe it as somebody who was rich in the 80s had a house and they built it. That's what it looked like. If Zach Morris built a house, it would look like that.
Zach Morris really cool is trash.
Oh man. Yeah. I'm surprised.
I would encourage people to do Ryder Cups for little tournaments. If you want to do them, they're the best. They are by far the best. Burning Mart's basically a Ryder Cup tournament.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it looked like a lot of fun. I'm surprised you guys were able to add up all those extra points.
Well, I don't know. We'll have to audit later. We've had some audits later where another team actually won because we have like a 3-point bonus at the end, and it gets messy.
Yeah, we saw that you had a stream going. We were hoping we could hear what you guys were saying, but you did it for good reason to keep it silent.
You just start talking so much, and normally it's like because we all went to the same high school, so we're like, oh my God, that girl Bubba was so hot in 1999. But she's a mom with 6 or whatever, so you don't get that on Facebook.
So what team actually ended up winning that?
Team 97 won. So like lifetime totals. Team 98 is probably up 1, probably like 6 games to 5 right now in the grand total of it. So
okay.
So we'll have to buy the keg this year. So that's how it goes.
All right. So Troy, you got a big tournament coming up in February 24th to be exact, in Green Bay, and you got a couple announcements you want to make about that tournament.
Yeah, we'll go deeper into it at a future podcast, but. A couple of developments that have been going on. One, and this is the big one. Arda Okel, we talked about him when Darrell was on. He's a hockey host over at MSG Networks. He will actually be there live hosting the event as our commentator for the stream.
That's pretty cool that he's coming all the way out there to Green Bay from New York. That's awesome.
Yeah, yep. So we were able to lock down a sponsor who we're not naming just yet that was able to fund that. And it's not official yet, but it's looking like we're going to have an organ player there, and I will be singing the national anthems of both Canada and the United States in the event.
That's hilarious.
My Trojan handle is at Trojan Voice for a reason. So there, I'll be tickling everyone's eardrums whether they want it or not. But so that'll be happening. And one of the things that we had a contingent plan in case the zoning didn't come through, but the zoning did come through for our venue. So they are in the process of actually converting their space into the VR arcade. So it's a brand new business. And in fact, we'll be utilizing their facility prior to them actually opening officially that part of their business. It's a production studio that they're using a multi-purpose space for with these Omnis and everything. An Omni is this 360-degree treadmill for the virtual reality experience. So every user or every adult that pays will have a 10-minute free session for that, and they can buy more time if they want. So that's a nice little side thing. But and then finally, we haven't created an event for it yet. We're kind of going low key, but we're going to do we already have all of the equipment, the tables, the chairs, the tube TVs out there. So we're going to do some Tecmo the night before, and there will be a low cost buy-in, $10 if you're participating in the NHL. And if you're not NHL, but you want to come down and check it out, $20. So we're going to do very similar to the Detroit Kumite with their format where they have you keep playing people that have the same record as you. So if you lose a game, you play against someone who just lost a record. If you won, you play against someone who won. And then after your 4 games, we're going to do a pros versus Joes bracket. So you're going to have if you had a good enough record, you'd be playing for a prize at the top as the pros, and the Joes will be playing for a prize at the top. So that's a little side thing that we'll be doing there. So much more to talk about that we can get into, in the next cycle. But it's February 24th, and then the 23rd is when the Tecmo is happening. So the 24th is the NHL 94, Super Nintendo, and Genesis. Your entry fee gets you both tournaments automatically entered. So it doesn't matter if you're any good at one or the other. You used to have a shot to get some games, and it's going to be an amazing experience. And King Raph and Angry Jay, that the 1 and 2 players on Sega Genesis, will be there. And we have right now, I believe, 6 different states, including Canada, that are currently represented as far as committed to coming. Official signups and prepay will go live January 1st in 2018. So we'll have those links ready to go by then.
All right, we'll talk more about that next month. We'll take, if you guys are still watching, there's still a few of you out there. If you have any questions for us, we'll answer them now. But there is one question, and I think Nick would be the best to answer this. It's from Adam Burnett. He says, are you guys thinking about having an NBA Jam tournament?
Oh, besides Madison?
No, I think he's just asking, are you guys thinking about having an NBA Jam tournament? That's why I said you would be the best to answer.
Yeah, no, that's the day, the Friday night retro for Tecmo Madison. There'll be a big NBA Jam tournament. It's growing in size, and I'm making sure I got enough Segas and 4-ways, and there's going to be a ton of other games going on. There's going to be like Tecmo doubles that day, and there might be a Street Fighter one. There might be a Smash Brothers. I can't remember, but yeah, and definitely there'll be an NBA Jam run by more than just me, and it'll be a good time. There might even be singles. Dave kind of runs the show there, so I'm just the muscle with all the Sega. So, but they'll be figuring all that out soon. But it's going to be a good time. April 6th,
and I can announce
coincidentally, my grandma-in-law, my wife's grandma's 100th birthday, so it's gonna suck. I'm still gonna go to NBA Jam, but I'm gonna get my ass chewed when I get back.
Yeah.
So to prepare for anyone that wants to be in that tournament, I'm going to be hosting an online NBA Jam singles tournament.
Fun.
Coordinating 2v2 online is an absolute nightmare to the average, but what it'll do is a couple different things. It'll get people set up with an online emulator besides just the Nintendo variant, so that'll open up the world to things like NHL 94, 95, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, anything else they want to play on that emulator. They'll be set up for that play at that point.
Yeah, it's a learning curve for our age group, I think, doing that emulator stuff. I have a lot of buddies that would do it, but they just don't want to go through the stuff or download some weird software,
I've got it to the point now where I literally just remote into people's computers with their permission, and I just do it for them, and it takes about 5 minutes.
Yeah, definitely.
So that will be happening. I'll post a link next podcast if you're still interested in signing up sometime next month. It should be mid-month, roughly. We should have that sign up finalized or near finalized. So,
all right, great, Troy. And I think we lulled everyone to sleep at this point. There's no other questions for us. So everyone who tuned in, thanks for watching. If you watch this later, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of these. I'll also put links to Nick and Troy's stuff, Twitter and YouTubes and whatnot. So, as well as Darrell as well. So thanks for joining us. Do you guys have anything else you want to say before we sign off tonight?
Have a good holiday. See you next year.
Your 60-bit NHL with your loved ones over the holidays. You're doing it wrong.
Yes, exactly.
I'll have Tecmo Super Bowl Christmas Eve stream going, so you can catch that on my channel. So we'll see you guys later. Have a good night.
Good night.